Gata on opening the sutra is on page 6 of your chant book. Gata on opening the sutra.
Good evening, everybody. Gosh, there must be a magnet over there. So many people sat themselves over there. How's everybody this evening? You all got here. Congratulations. So I titled this talk, Give It All You've Got. The subtitle could be Don't Hold Back. Or wholehearted. Wholehearted. That's what we aim for, being wholehearted. Nothing held back, separated out, left out. So often we talk about the applications of our practice to everyday life. How we use insight into the impermanent and interdependent nature of the self and the world in order to free ourselves from the suffering that comes from ignoring these truths. There's so many examples of how the ignorance of this plays out in the world. We use the words and teachings of wise elders with the true nature to guide us and clarify our a way to live that's wide awake and aligned with who we truly are and how things truly work, how they come together. So in recent weeks we've been studying the details of the Noble Eightfold Path. Noble meaning living according to our truest inheritance, the largest treasure that we have inherited. We are living accordingly. And how we embody this path ourselves. So this is an embodiment practice. Zen is an embodiment practice. Even though it doesn't necessarily look that way initially, but until it becomes an embodied practice, it is just philosophy. It's just a lot of chatter. So we practice right view, right speech, right intention, right action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration or samadhi. And we don't talk a lot about samadhi, but it's one of the three basic concerns of this practice. The other two are ethics and wisdom. Wisdom, we could also say is study. So study, samadhi, and ethics. We do receive the description in the teachings, and then we explore in our own experience how these teachings get lived into. We don't live the method. We use the method to find out how to inhabit our unique lives fully. and with integrity, according to who we are, our special gifts, what we have to offer, and what we are particularly challenged by is how we can see what our path is. Each of us has our own specific path according to our karmic bundle, the things that we're working through. And this helps us understand who our true face is and the true face of the world, which can be direct and unambiguous, and lived into wholeheartedly. When we're not going in a lot of different directions and through confusion about what the true situation is, we can really be wholehearted. So we need to regain wholeheartedness in this very cynical world. Each of us. That's our work. And we begin by practicing wholeheartedness in Zazen. So that's kind of the samadhi equals wholeheartedness in Zazen and in any activity, actually. Lao Tzu taught silence is the great revelation. I was really struck by that phrase. Silence is the great revelation. And if you have had the blessing of experiencing true inner silence, you'll recognize the truth of this. It is a revelation. It reveals the true life. We always listen to silence within any teaching. The silence within every moment, within every impression, every impulse. So what is this silence? This is a real challenge. What is the silence? What is silence? Appreciating it in any moment, which is our only moment. So part of silence is only moment. This is the only moment. Do you know this silence for yourself? You know, it's a word, but unless you know it for yourself, it's meaningless. Do you know silence beyond any notion of self? That's also a possibility for all of us, because it is our nature, our truest nature. The only way to approach this is with everything you've got. Every shred of attention and breath. Nothing split away or held aside, no matter what came before or what comes after. What you know is waiting for you when you leave here. Doesn't matter. All that's put aside. It's all put aside. Chosen does say, it's like wrapping up all of this stuff of today, all of the things going on and the thoughts and the concerns in a little package and putting it over here. And you know you'll get back to it. But right now, nothing is going on. And can you relax enough to allow nothing to go on? So there's a story that I love this story, the Jataka tales. And if you're not familiar with the Jataka tales, they are the tales of the former lives of the Buddha before the Buddha awoke completely. So they're tales of his many lifetimes through being different species, bird, tiger, elephant, just many, many stories. They're wonderful stories, and they're part of the mythology of Buddhism. But as in all mythology, they tell a deeper truth. So these tales tell us how the Buddha came to be finally embodied in a way that allowed him to really be fully awake, just as we do that in our own, we take our own way toward that. So here's the story. Long ago and far away, the Buddha was a merchant, and he was leading a really long caravan through a wide featureless desert. So there were 100 carts filled with grain, filled with rugs, with what else? Spices, cloth. And so these were carts drawn by oxen, and there were also many camels alongside, and all of the drivers and people, some passengers, some people just hitched onto this caravan because it was the safest way to travel with others. And in addition, he hired a desert pilot. The desert pilot knows how to traverse a featureless desert, being guided by the stars. And the desert, of course, during the day is beastly hot, so they would rest during the day and they would travel by night by starlight. So after 6 days of traveling, and everything was going swimmingly, so to speak, they were just, the pilot knew that they were just one more night's trek from their destination. So she suggested that they jettison the extra stuff that they were carrying, the extra food, the extra wood for cooking fires, and the extra water. They weren't going to need it. They were going to be there in the morning. But also she was very tired and she nodded off. And of course, when you nod off, you don't realize you're nodding off. And she didn't realize it. When she woke up, the sun was up, and she thought, oh no, oh no. And she looked around and she realized they were nowhere near where they were supposed to be. I mean, she had been a pilot for a long time, so she knew how far away they were. And she figured that in the best circumstances, they could make it out in one more day, but they didn't have any water, and it was hot. So everybody was really, really depressed and ready to give up and lie down and die. But the merchant, so they all erected these canopies and to give them a little bit of shade, and the merchant went off looking at all of the dunes around them and searching for something that he knew he would find. And after a while he did. He saw just a few pale blades of grass. And he knew right there they needed to dig. So he called out, everybody get up, bring shovels, we gotta dig. And so they came with the shovels and they started to dig by the grass. And they dug and they dug and they were digging, and it was so hot. Some of them were fainting, some of them were gasping. It was a terrible situation, but they had some hope. But as the day wore on and they dug and they dug and they dug, after a while, when the hole was very deep, so basically they were digging a well, the sand began to get a little bit damp. But meanwhile, the sand, the upper sand was falling in on them, so they were just ready to dig. But then they heard, oh, wait a minute, and they could hear down that there was rushing water. So they knew they just had to keep digging. So they dug and they dug, and finally they were just exhausted. And the merchant said, well, tie me on a rope and lower me down into the well. I want to just see what the situation is here. So we went down, and meanwhile the sand was starting to fall in. I mean, it was kind of a hairy situation. But there was the sound of rushing water, no doubt about it. And so he said, just a little bit more. You know, who is the youngest, strongest person here who can save the day? So this young man steps forward, goes down into the well, and digs another foot, 2 feet, and he hits rock. And he tries to get through the rock, and he digs around and he can't find an edge to the rock. It's like a ledge, and it's really a serious situation. And so he says, pull me up. It's hopeless. And the merchant said, it's not hopeless. Just give it all you've got. Here's There's the phrase that. So with that spur, he just whacked that rock, and it split, and a huge spout of water, fresh, cool water, was released. And to this very day, this is a source for water for all the travelers in that area. So that's the story. Give it all you've got. When I read that, and years ago we acted this out with the children's program when we were still up in the gorge, when the Zen Community of Oregon was still practicing in the gorge. We had a children's program, and the children there were my kids, basically. There weren't any other kids there. So we acted it out in Sunday school, and it was very enlivening. But it also pointed out something that is completely essential in this practice. And it's what it's all about, is being real and being all here and all in, no matter what you're doing. And you notice the difference when you are all in and when you're not. All in is a complete engagement. And the results of complete engagement are usually wonderful, joyful. So with complete engagement is joy. It's one of the enlightenment factors. So let's see, what else did I want to say here? So this really is the best instruction for paying attention during Zazen. Because it's really easy during Zazen to not give it all. What does it mean to give your whole self to Zazen? What does that mean to give your whole self to Zazen? Body and mind completely, completely. And that's just what I want to be stressing in this talk, is that this is how the practice becomes quite transformative. There are many, many factors that are involved in the transformation of you. Transformation into who you are, who you've always been. But freeing it up like that water. You know, you just have to give it all you've got. And then this font of fresh, life-giving, a drink comes forward. We find the power to decipher our life. What's not attainable through thought and language. We do a lot of talking, but actually the key doesn't come in the talking, but it runs in a deep course through all of our life, and in being really open in our central channel, just like that well was, just like that crack through the rock. We all have rocks in us that obstruct the free flow of our life energies. So going directly at those. And the way we say we do that is by experiencing it. Awareness is a great mallet to work through the words about and get directly to the very real life within. The Heart Sutra urges us to keep going. It says, going beyond, always going beyond. To completely realize the meaning of the Tathagata's teaching on awakening. True awakening that is just not just anything that is separate and outside of this ordinary life. Machig, who is a great Tibetan saint, uses an image, here it is, to inspire us. As in the sky, all clouds disappear into sky itself. Wherever they go nowhere. Wherever they are nowhere. This is the same for thoughts in the mind. When mind looks directly at the content of mind, when mind looks directly at whatever is right now, in the body, in the senses. The waves of conceptual thought disappear. The beauty of this particular way of saying it is, the waves disappear just the way clouds disappear. They just on their own. It's the nature of things to move through. It's not that this experience of awakening is so rarefied. It's more that it becomes evident to us when we cultivate the habit of turning our interest from thoughts in the mind during zazen or during anything, thoughts that distract, that create tension and separation, turning the mind from thoughts to whatever it is, just whatever it is that's going on, into raw data, including turning the mind to awareness itself. This is what Dogen tells us to do. Turn the eye to look within. And that's just a really interesting instruction. What is that awareness itself? So we are called on to cultivate a quiet mind and a habit of quieting thoughts by being less involved with them, especially during zazen, and instead turning the mind to face within and just remain. Just stay right here. Each time you sit zazen, resting in this empty field, not demanding entertainment, not demanding any great insight, not demanding anything. This is really relinquishing all demands, the self that demands. So it's subtle and invisible. It's our superpower, invisible superpower of zazen that lights our way. And if you've had a particularly open and quiet sit, you may notice that when the sit's over, you get insights that you hadn't had. I certainly do. They come from right here. You know, they didn't come from anywhere, they don't go anywhere. It's just like, oh, gee, here it is. When we are released from the noise of thought and we receive our entire inheritance of our Buddha nature. Always. So don't settle for less. Keep going and give it all you've got. Give it all you've got, even when you think it's hopeless. Even when you have gotten to some sense of skepticism. And just keep going because you're thirsty. And you know where the water can be found. Right here. So may we all drink deeply.